augmented reality, which is going to be way bigger than virtual reality, is going to, like, the digital world is not going to be encased inside our phones and our computers anymore. It's going to be, the grid is going to sit on top of the actual world, and everyone will be able to, in 5 years, see the 5 years, see the grid, which by then will be very densely populated. They'll be able to see the grid through, their eyeglasses.
Welcome to Digital Mindfulness. I'm your host, Lawrence Ampofo. Today we're here with the CEO and founder of Willow Group, Nichol Bradford. Nichol's work focuses on the ways that technology can help individuals expand beyond their perceived mental limits to develop and transform themselves to the highest level. She applies the same skills to the realm of evaluating psychological well-being. Willow itself is a transformative technology company focused on employing rigorous scientific research to developing training protocols, hardware and software that can produce a reliable and positive change in the human experience. You should listen to this episode if you really want to understand about the impacts of transformative technology in our lives, why augmented reality will be more important than virtual reality, and how technology can be used to amplify human potential. But first of all, welcome to the show. For 3 years now, we've brought you the best teachers and thought leaders to teach you how to be your best self in a digitally distracted world. If you're new to our show, then the best place to find out much more about us is to visit digitalmindfulness.net/start, which has a collection of some required listening podcasts where we discuss everything from becoming more focused to habit building, cyberbullying, and much, much more. Okay, enjoy the show with Nichol Bradford. Hi Nichol, and welcome to Digital Mindfulness. It's a real pleasure to have you here and to talk about this amazing, burgeoning topic of transformative technology. So welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
So Nichol, I'm wondering if you can tell the audience a little bit about your backstory, because it's an incredibly interesting journey that you've had to transformative technology, but I'm wondering if you can just share that with us.
Okay, so I was in video games for 14 years. And my last major post in video games was that I worked for a company called Blizzard Entertainment, which you may have heard of. They make World of Warcraft, StarCraft, Diablo. They're essentially the Pixar of the games industry. They make some of the most iconic and important video games ever. It's an amazing company, and I'm still, I'm really close with all the people, many of the people who work there and all of the leadership there. So I oversaw the China operations for Blizzard Entertainment. So that was, World of Warcraft, and that's a giant game, and China is a giant part of that giant game. So I ran operations for that. And I loved it, and I lived in Shanghai and China, and it was really great. At the same time, I found, and many people might be like this, but I just couldn't stop thinking. I thought all the time. I just thought and thought and thought and thought and thought, and it was actually quite exhausting. And it wasn't, constant negative thinking. It could be positive thinking. I could have made a decision or come up with a plan, and then I would just repeat it, until I executed it. So I just, I thought constantly. And I remember thinking years ago, even before I started meditating, I just had this sense that meditation would be good for me, and that, and that it would just really change my life. And so finally one day in China, I decided to learn to meditate, and I went on a retreat, and I had a glimpse of peace. I had a glimpse of quiet, what quiet feels like, what quiet sounds like. And it wasn't consistent, but it was enough to make me really, interested in engaging and pursuing it. So I continued to, try a couple of things. I have to say at that stage, I was not properly fit. So I could meditate for an hour and then, get off the pillow, go into a meeting and, and get tense again. So I wasn't transformed. It was relaxation, not meditation. And that's why one of the reasons why it's so important to find fit. Because, anytime you pay attention to your breath, you're going to relax, but you could also run, and then at least you lose weight, right? At least you get the benefits of losing weight. So, fit in terms of actually properly, actually training the mind enough to have a transformation. That is critical. So I had relaxation, but I did not have transformation. So, I could, like I said, be on a pillow and then get triggered a half an hour later after an hour session.
And that was
so
pretty good though.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was mega relaxation. That's why if there's anything I can, if there's anything I could say to your listeners is that it's like if the way that you're showing up in the world is not changing from your practice, then you are improperly fit. It's like wearing, shoes the wrong size. Go do something else. So I was, I just kept at it with not a lot of, transformation. And then one day, a friend of mine had just come back from a Vipassana retreat in southern Japan. And he had a lot of great things to say about it. I didn't really know enough. I'd been on my Yana path before, but I hadn't tried the Theravada path yet. And I was just I was like, okay, I'll give it a try. So I signed up for this retreat and I go to southern Japan, and it was about an hour and a half outside of Kyoto. It was like a 1-bar town in terms of signal. That's how far out. It's kind of amazing to be anywhere in Japan and have 1 bar on your cell phone. It's you're really in the boonies then. So we go to this place, and I had a transformation, and my experience was really dramatic. 10 days later, I walked out happier than I'd ever been before. And in hindsight, what I understood is that previously I'd been optimistic. There's a difference between optimistic and happy. I was very cognitively oriented towards, the glass is half full, and I would only see it that way. But I had trained myself to only see it that way. So most people would look at me and be like, "Oh, she seems pretty happy. She's always, upbeat and confident and all of those things." But, as you probably know from your own practice, there is the happiness that comes from the mind not pushing or pulling and having a dramatically lower level of grab as it relates to life. That happiness doesn't compare to, anything affirmations are going to do for you.
Yes.
Right. So one, I had that. And then the second part that was, actually really shocking was, I wasn't afraid. And, and that was another example of where I had not known that I was afraid. But, it's one of those things I didn't know that I wasn't afraid, that I was afraid until I wasn't. And a lot of it is that because of the concentration that I experienced in my mind, I had a dramatic decline in my self-referential thinking and the level of rumination. And, I don't think it's a coincidence that, at least in the West, people who are clinically depressed also are shown to have high levels of rumination. And so what meditation does is it decreases the internal chatter. And that is the beginning of, being, that's the first step towards freedom, in the sense that, it helps you no longer identify your thoughts with yourself. And eventually you get to a place where yourself is not yourself. But that's, that's another story. And so so I walked out of that retreat, with all the same problems that I walked in with, like all the, there were things that I had wanted, I'd wanted to be a mom, and, I wanted to be in a relationship, and there were like all of these things that, were still not in my life. But I was happy and fearless and really curious about, wow, how can 10 days do, what, 10 years of therapy couldn't. And so I just became really curious. And then, for me, I really needed to understand what happened to me, because it was super dramatic. And then 2, I wanted to share it with friends. And 3, one of the things about World of Warcraft and in the game and the business that I operated was that it was definitely a game of scale. And so because of my background, my orientation immediately went to, okay, how do you scale access to that feeling and for people? Because if people could feel happy and fearless, just think about how that would affect our society. We waste so much time on, the isms, racism, sexism, ageism, classism, regionalism, all of these things. If you could take all of that human energy and you could apply it towards solving the problems facing mankind, we'd be done. We'd be done with all of it, and so that's kind of where my orientation is. And so I was introduced to Dr. Jeffrey Martin, who is my co-founder, by a mutual friend who knew that Jeffrey was always also interested in how you create scalable, accessible, affordable ways of, helping people feel the way I had felt. And so that leads into the Finder's Course, which, the purpose of it is to, one of the thinkings is like, if one of the biggest problems for scaling meditation is fit, because that's why people quit. That's why they think that it doesn't work for them. Like if you've ever talked to someone who says, I tried meditation, it doesn't work for me. It's like they were just improperly fit, but because they're also misinformed, they think that one technique is the one for them. Or the other thing that happens is that, people really have a lot of appreciation for a particular belief system. And so they actually sign up for the belief system before they know if the technique mechanistically actually will work for them. And so you also, on the flip side, have a lot of people who are, deep on a path in terms of how much time they've logged. But, it's like that person that you've met where, they're spiritual and you're like, I don't know about that. You're like, wow. They're meditating all the time and you're like, okay, I don't know about that. It's like some of my worst emails are from spiritual people, So, that's a good example of it's like they signed up for the belief system, and I love beliefs, and I have no issues with religion at all. But they're mismatched, and the belief systems, because often don't have the room for you to switch, and they don't have the room to say, okay, I can believe this. I can separate my beliefs from my mechanism, and I can still I can give all the offerings and I can do all of that. But what actually gives me transformation for a physiological, psychological basis, the one that actually changes the way my mind works, the one that actually increases the level of coherence between, my right and left brain hemisphere, it actually is something else. And I'm okay. I have the ability to contain both. I'm okay, doing what I need to do to stay in my community and to love on my community and this belief system that I have. But at the same time, I recognize that mechanistically, I'm going to go do this so I can have transformation. So that's really what the Finder's Course is about, is scaling the ability for people to find fit quickly. And, people go, oh, it's 18 weeks. That's not quick. Well, in comparison to 14,000 lifetimes, it is pretty quick. Or most people who do go from path to path, if you think of the people that if you approach it from a beliefs first system rather than a mechanism first point of view, then people will spend 2 to 3 years on a path before they finally give up or try something else. And so, in comparison to what's happening in the real world, most people are taking, if they don't get lucky on the first time, then it's taking them 4, 5, 6 years to get there, and they might give up. So 18 weeks is a relatively short period of time. And so the purpose of that is just really, like I said, to make finding fit more efficient. And it also turns out that, somehow between this like combination of things, people are also experiencing dramatic increases in well-being. And then the other thing that we do that's a little different is that most paths combine, theology or philosophy with technique. What we do, because we don't do any history, theology, philosophy, none of that. There's lots of people who are really good at that. So, why would we do what anyone else is doing? The world doesn't need, yet another person to do that. But we mix positive psychology with the technique. And with positive psychology, many people don't know, it's actually there's a decay curve to techniques for positive psychology. So positive psychology now is completely proven and validated. It works on humans. And there's also, a lot of different techniques, but it decays. So if you are grateful, if you're doing gratitude practice and you're grateful for your health 4 days in a row, if you were to be tested before and after your 4th day of gratitude for your health, you're actually a little bit less grateful. Like you got a little bit less of a well-being boost off of it. But you could do something like grateful for health on Monday, grateful for family on Tuesday, grateful for, work on Wednesday, then grateful for health on Thursday. And you would, get the same boost out of it. And so what we do is we manage the curve so that, we're watching that to make sure that people stay at the top of well-being while the meditation, because it takes a minute for meditation to kick in. So while the meditation's kicking in, the positive psychology is already elevating them from a well-being standpoint, and then they just start working together. And so, the whole purpose of the course really is, how do you get towards scalable, accessible, and ultimately affordable ways for people to, get these tools and get the benefits of these tools. Is a completely secular tool that combines 26 different meditation techniques back to back in an 18-week program. It's very intense in that people meditate. This may or may not sound like a lot to you, but the minimum time commitment is an hour a day, period, from the beginning to the end. And many people meditate more than that. We also have dramatic results, like we're seeing over 50% shifts in anxiety, stress, depression. We see big shifts in meaning in life, sense of satisfaction. We also see some minor things in, actually shifts in neurosis, which neurosis is a personality trait. It's not supposed to shift. Some people, psychology is starting to say that it shifts. But neurosis has a lot to do with the level of inner chatter. So if that inner chatter drops out because the mind is, more concentrated, then it kind of makes sense that it should have a positive impact on neurosis. And so we are data-driven. What we do is we do 4 hours of psychological testing at the beginning, middle, and end, and then we do weekly surveys. So we've done, at this point, we're on 10 cohorts. We've done 8 cohorts just with data. Some of the things that we've seen is that, like our big premise, the reason why we set it up this way is we think that one of the most important things that someone has to solve in order to establish a practice is finding fit. Because there's different techniques in different families and different things work for different people. So there's the auditory techniques like mantras, or there's the kinesthetic techniques like the whole Goenka system, body scanning. Then there's direct inquiry, like there's just like different types of techniques. And we see different things really resonate with different people. And I have an anecdotal story for me, and it's probably, you might be a fun question to ask is like how I got here. But we also see it in the data. So like the moment someone is actually properly fit, when they hit a technique that actually just works for them, one, they feel like it works. What we do is, our course, we're not making anyone Bruce Lee. Like, it's not a mastery course. You're not Bruce Lee by the end of it. But what you are is, people, because we believe that 7 days of earnest practice in a technique is enough to tell you if there's a physiological, psychological suitability in it. So if and it doesn't, that's not getting into, there's a lot of masters would be like, oh no, you must practice for 4 months before you decide if something's good or not for you. We think that we don't agree with that.
So Nichol, let's just back up a minute, and I wonder if you can just let the audience know what exactly transformative technology is and why is it so important?
Okay. So, transformative technology, the broadest definition is any use case, any tech use case, where the goal is to improve the mental and emotional well-being of humans. And so that is meditation apps are transformative technologies. Consumer EEG bands like the Muse are transformative technologies. I also consider emotion recognition software to be transformative technology. And the reason why is because we're moving towards a world of smart everything. So your car is going to be smart, your refrigerator is going to be smart, your toilet's going to be smart, like everything's going to be smart and talking to you. And, human beings are really wired to want sort of a mirroring of our emotional state. It's why we have mirror neurons and why they're so active and why, in a couple of cases where people have, an oversupply of mirror neurons, they're like incredibly empathetic. And so we want that. We long for that. We're wired for that. And so when we're in this world where everything's talking to us and none of it knows that if we've had a bad day or not, the people whose smart house is also really smart about them, those people are going to be happier than the ones who, have a, technology that isn't picking up on their emotional state. So I include emotional recognition software. I also include things like pattern recognition. So there's a really great product called Ginger.io that I just really love. It is an app that amplifies mental health support. And, if you sign up, then and you give them this particular permission, so you sign up and it, allows you to interact with a licensed mental health support person who is like set up for you, and they give you different assignments. In this one particular edition that they have, if you give them permission, then the app monitors the phone. And so what that means is it establishes a baseline for you. And then when you deviate from the baseline in a significant way, the first thing it does is it informs you, hey, you're waking up really late. It doesn't sound that nice, but or it's not that colloquial, but it says, oh, you're waking up late, and you've woken up later than often, or you're staying up really late, or you used to text a lot of people and now you're not texting anyone. And so the people who sign up for that particular feature are people who are battling depression. Like, it's a real problem for them. And so they're willing to take any support that they can get to make that not happen. And a good sign of, a depressive episode coming on is a big change in behavior. And so it, pings them, hey, are you okay? Then it also, notifies the people that they have allowed, given permission for to notify, namely, usually their mental health support person. That is fantastic. That is the sort of thing that amplifies the number of people that a mental health practitioner can support. And, they've started in depression, but there isn't any reason why, human psychology is a spectrum. So on one end, there's depression. On the other end is sort of like the optimization. It's, enlightenment, if you will, persistent non-symbolic consciousness of people, who have sort of like gone to the absolute boundaries of what we think is possible for human psychology. And it's everything in the middle. And, people often think about these states as islands, but they're not, in any person's life, they can be in a couple of different places. So on one hand, on the far right, you have people who need what I call human support, where, they need, they're dealing with stress, anxiety, depression. On the far left, you have people who are like pushing on the very limits of human psychology, whether it's spiritually, or you have someone like Wim Hof, who is able to up and down regulate his autoimmune system. And he's been in quite a few universities. It's proven that he can do this, and he can do it with his mind. And then in the middle, you have the human condition: loneliness, happiness, connection, satisfaction, meaning making, and all of these things, there are elements that can be supported via technology in order to up-level the overall skill set that we have, in mankind. It's like the other day I was talking to someone and they were like, well, don't you think suffering and struggle is important? And I'm like, yeah, but, and I really believe in the full scope of human emotion. Like that's important. It's a part of what makes us human. Like we are going to, get our feelings hurt. We are going to be betrayed. We are going to have our hearts broken. We are going to be disappointed, like all of those things. But it's like, if we can get to a point where, just think of the number of people, who have had experiences happen, and because they had a relatively low level of skill, they dragged that through the next 20 years, and the collateral damage, is ridiculous, to their own lives and the lives of people who interact with them. And, and especially, coming from a practice background, like the compassion that you have for this, for ourselves, for ourselves. And then also for, a lot of times when I see someone do something that is, unskillful, I just my heart just breaks for them, because it's like, ow, they're trying to get what they need. Even though it might be in an unskillful way. And so, what I think the hope of transformative technology is that by increasing the awareness of self, like self-awareness, because, thinking is slow, as you probably know from many of your awareness-based practices. Like, thinking's actually pretty slow, but awareness is pretty fast. And so a lot of times, if you've ever been in a situation where this certainly was something for, that used to happen to me. It's like, I could get mad a week later. Like a week later, I'd be walking down the street and I'd be like, hey, we're not actually really fast at understanding where we are psychologically, or whether or not something, or whether or not a situation dropped a seed in the mind stream. Right. So, so I think enhancing people's ability to, be aware of what's happening to them psychologically, because they have a greater awareness of the body, because the body's always in the present moment. I think that's really, that's a really useful thing. And then, as as your self-awareness increases, it's like you inevitably become more aware of other people. And I mean legitimate self-awareness, not like not the like neurotic self-centeredness, but self-awareness. And so, transformative technology also has the potential to, make scalable, accessible, affordable some of the things that we train to via meditation. And I guess, and the last thing I'll say is that I really don't believe in a single tool. Not only do I think that different things work for different people, I also think that different things work for the same person differently at different times. And so it would be really great for us to have a variety of tools that we can use, for the right time. Like you don't wear a Speedo down the street in the winter in London. It's not the right outfit. And you don't wear a winter coat, in the summer in Ibiza. It's not the right outfit, and the same thing goes for meditation, transformative technology, practices for well-being. It's like right tool, right time.
So Nichol, what forces then are converging to make this whole space possible?
That's a great question. There's if you were to follow the flow, there's technical and social forces. The technical forces are, the first thing is the advent of the wearables. So a lot of the, heart rate variability, galvanic skin response, and EEG are well understood, physiological data points. But prior to the wearable market, they were tethered to labs and hospitals. So wearables came online. Sensors started to get really cheap because of Moore's law. So actually it would be sensors got cheap, then wearables came out. And then, wearables on their own and the sensors on their own, that's not enough information. Like what might cause a stress response, what looks like a stress response in me might be excitement in you. And so the second part is sort of or what's coming is the advent of what's called your digital exhaust. So your digital exhaust is all of the contextual data and information around, what's happening. So it's like the wearable that actually ties into your calendar and shows that, every time you see your mother-in-law, I mean, you might say that's common sense, but, every time you see your mother-in-law, your stress goes through the roof. It's like, oh, well, maybe you should meditate right before you see your mother-in-law kind of thing. So on the technical side, we're developing greater and greater abilities. And like I mentioned at the very beginning, the pace and speed at which we're starting to, really have greater technical ability to understand, more and more signals. It's really dramatic. And then on the social side, we're in the midst of great change. Socially, a huge social change, and it is stressful. And then also, the level of stimulation that we're getting from the technology, because, it's like the first time a kid eats ice cream, they'll eat as much as they can. And so because we don't have some of the things that you and I talked about at the top of the show, about how do you really manage, the technology that's in your life, not sign off from it, but really manage it. And what do you do daily to, decrease, the negative influence that it has. Though the positive influence is amazing, but, how do you find that balance? So people are really stressed. They need something. They're stressed by what's happening in the world. Even if we're all good, still change is stressful itself. And so these things are coming together. And then I guess the last kind of interesting piece is that a lot of tech people are going on meditation retreats. And so it's the thing for tech entrepreneurs. There's this joke that it's sort of like if you look up the Silicon Valley hierarchy of needs, it's really funny. It's like somewhere above, Tesla and above buying a Tesla, but below, giving life advice is going on a meditation retreat. And so it's kind of funny, but it's really not, because, what that's doing is people who have these tremendous skills at creating scalable, accessible, affordable products are starting to go on meditation retreats because either A, they've aged into a place where they're like, you know what, I'm on my, second exit, third wife, and I'm not happy. And why? so it's suddenly they've aged into a place where, they're like, I've got to, like, all this stuff was supposed to make me happy and it didn't. So then they start meditating. Or stress. They do it for stress, or they do it because it's cool. And then they go on these retreats, and like myself, they have these, sudden changes in how they experience the world, and then they want to bring their talent to bear at making that something that's more accessible to people. It's sort of like the natural, it's a natural process, I think, of, awakening.
So I want to ask, in this age of hyperconnectivity and digital distraction, what would you say are the most important human qualities, and how do we cultivate those?
I think that in this age of hyperconnectivity, the most important human traits, I really think that I would say one that's really important is compassion for ourselves and for one another. If you sort of look at the dialogue around the US elections and also around Brexit, there was a lot of people talking at each other and not actually talking to each other. And that kind of ties into the transformative technology and everything else. We have got to be able to get the fear level down in society in order to be able to solve any of these problems. And so I think that, really starts with, kindness and compassion, so that we are, actually concerned about hearing what other people are thinking. Because when you get into these rigid positions, it makes it very difficult to connect. So I'd say one is compassion. Two is self-awareness. And I guess actually self-awareness should go first, because self-awareness is really also tied to self-regulation, emotional regulation. If you don't have the ability to control your fear response, then things are going to get out of your hands very quickly. And what happens, as I mentioned, when we go into our fear response, then all of our biases, click in. And so, there are so many biases, from groupthink to, just sort of goes on and on and on. And, those biases are not necessarily bad. They are basically cognitive shortcuts that people use. And they sort of have arisen out of how our brains operate. But it's important not to be a slave to one's bias. And so I would say number one is self-awareness and emotional regulation, and being able to regulate one's fear response. So when situations come up, you have the ability to be present in the moment, because all of the options and the resources are in the moment. There's a really interesting book called Crucial Conversations. And the guys who wrote it, they were management consultants, and they actually did influence maps of companies to find out who was actually the most valued person in the company. And it wasn't necessarily based on hierarchy. It wasn't based on like the formal org chart. And it wasn't often the person, like many times it wasn't who they expected it to be, like the person who really carries the weight in an organization. And what they found out when they sort of really dug in and asked people, like, why does that person's opinion matter to you so much? It was that the person was able to have the difficult, crucial conversation and like show up in that conversation in a way that was highly skilled, even if they weren't trained in it. And so, for people who want to be, influential in their companies or in their communities, in their PTA, in their society, how do we treat each other? Being able to, be present in the moment so you have all your resources available to you. That is like the number one thing that we're going to need in this hyper-connected world. And as we sort of chatted about earlier, the connection's only going to get more intense because augmented reality is absolutely coming, and it's going to layer the digital map on top of the real world, and you'll be able to see it at all times. It won't be, it won't be constrained to your phone and your computer. Maybe there'll be this fun thing where people like decide to go wild and turn off their interface. And maybe it'll be a thing, maybe 20 years from now, you and I will be on a call and we'll be talking about just turn off your interface for an hour and then feel the world the way it really is, or something like that. So people are going to have to skill up really fast.
I wonder then, just going on from that, I know I said that was my penultimate question, but just going on from that, do you think then that with the conversions in technology that you were talking about, do you think that they can really help us to basically transform to, you've used the phrase finding fit, but do you think they can really help us transform? Because, transform is such a massive term. And, I'm thinking even of, people that I've spoken to about things like, for example, embodied cognition, right? The whole idea that there are sensors that might be able to quantify things like intuition, which for years we thought was this, it was totally mystical. We didn't understand it. It was just this gut feeling. But now that there's this cognition that sensors are now being able to record, right? And kind of almost like present back to us. And I'm wondering if you think that will truly help people transform, or if you think that actually the transformation is a human thing, that actually we do have to almost learn to be more compassionate. We have to learn to be fearless enough to have those crucial conversations. And
I think it's both, but you can train people, for example, to have, like, I'll give you a really great example of a product that I love. It's a trading card game, and it's for kids. Actually, the people who did it are out of London. We should have them come to your conference. And so it's a trading card game where you are spell casting, and it's got a heart rate variability sensor that goes from the phone to the ear. They're using the ear. And when a kid's playing it, the spells are more powerful the lower their heart rate. So they're learning how to control their physiology. And we know that, when you, some of the ways you lower your heart rate is that you slow your breathing, you pay more attention to your breathing. There's all sorts of techniques you can do to lower your heart rate. And so they're doing it for the purpose of casting stronger spells, but they're actually learning to regulate their physiology. And we know that when you regulate your physiology, you're also able to regulate your psychology. You're able to keep your adrenaline from coming online. That's why a lot of the things that psychologists and therapists teach people is that, like people with phobias and stuff like that, is to like watch their breath and to slow their breath, because you can intentionally keep yourself from going into fight or flight. So that is a really good, that's a tangible, practical example of how the technology can be used to teach us things that previously were hard to learn, or that there wasn't a tight feedback loop. See, humans love feedback loops. We're really good with feedback loops, but often in sort of traditional life, you don't get really tight feedback loops. But with that game, it's an instant feedback loop. So that when one of those kids is about to, they've got the ball, they're coming up to, they're playing soccer or football, and, and it's like the final goal, and they've got it, and, and it's not moving fast, like they're walking up to the line, and their heart's racing, and they're starting to get scared. They're going to know exactly what to do to calm down, so they can be really precise about the work that needs to be done. Same for exams, so it's like training in these incredibly valuable skill sets, which is basically learning how to control your fear response.
So Nichol, where can people find out more about you and your work and connect with you?
Okay. Okay, well, for Finder's Course, it's www.finderscourse, finderscourse.com. And then, two great resources. If someone is interested in making transformative technology or being a business person in a transformative technology company, a great way to understand the space is to go to our conference website. Because what we've done is we have all of the videos of our speakers up there, and it's probably one of the best resources on the web of like understanding where transformative technology is at. So that would be www.ttconf, CONF, like short for conference, .org.
That's great. Thanks so much, Nichol, for being a part of the show. It's been amazing having you on and sharing your wisdom with us. So thanks very much again.
My pleasure.